Boruto's plan has worked, as it now appears like we're heading towards the downfall of Jura himself. As with the plan that Kashin Koji had outlined, we wouldn't see Jura lose his force this fast. However, by Boruto deciding to take on matters into his own hand and change the future through his own individual actions, the same approach he took when it came to Momoshiki, that approach is allowing Boruto to move this planet as a whole towards a better future. Or at least, this is what it currently appears like the future is moving towards. As we already know that currently, we're seeing the fight between Kawaki versus Jura. Obviously, we don't necessarily know what is going to happen in that fight. However, through the glimpse and update that Kashin Koji has received due to Boruto's actions, we can see that it ultimately ends up resulting in Jura going back to his base where he ends up bleeding. This is a very important factor, as it would mean that in some way Boruto did end up taking some sort of a victory when it came to his decisions regarding Kawaki and helping him out, which would ultimately lead towards Jura going back to his base and bleeding. This would now mean that all the soul thorns that were collected in this fight, the ones of Matsuri and the ones of Ryu, have been safely retrieved, and Boruto and all his allies can move towards bringing back those people from the dead. And those people are Moegi and Shinki himself, which would ultimately release Gaara from that seal. As this seems to be the future that we are heading towards, a future where Jura ends up going back and we are now moving towards bringing those people back to life, which would then mean that in some way Jura ended up losing. While I do doubt that Kawaki is going to be able to take down Jura completely, as we literally see that that is not the case, the ending of that fight could result in Kawaki being injured and down for a period of time, but it also would result in Jura also being down, where he had to go back to his base. I do end up believing that this is going to be a very critical part of Jura's character, especially if after that we end up seeing a Jura who is provoked and a Jura who now views the Leaf as enemies. And this is where we will now begin Jura attempting to regain control, as in some way, shape and form, the shinju from the beginning of the arc had a level of control ever since Code essentially allowed them to come to be. Ever since their introduction in chapter 4, the shinju have been controlling the pace of how everything is going on. However, with the retrieval of the Sword Throne Bulb, which would ultimately lead towards Jura losing a big portion of his force, Jura would now have to view the Leaf as a serious threat, as not only will it be that Boruto has this information in regards to the shinju, but it means that everybody now knows, at least from the Leaf and some in the sand, that the way to bring back their loved ones is to essentially defeat the shinju and obtain their Soul Throne Bulb, and using that they can bring back their people to life. So the once immortal shinju, in a way, due to their connection to the Ten Tails, have now become mortal in a way that there is a way of killing them, which is through collecting their Soul Throne Bulb. And that realization is something that will ultimately end up enraging Jura. As we have been told by characters like Kashin Koji, that they should not provoke Jura under any circumstance, and what they should be doing and focusing on is taking out the shinjus individually in a way that doesn't lead to Jura making an appearance. With Boruto going against that plan, we did end up seeing that through his trust with Kawaki, that it yielded towards a future that, at least for this moment, seems a lot better, as Jura is back in his base injured, and it appears like from the futures that we can see, Team 10 is moving towards bringing back those people like Moegi and also like Shinki back to life using the Sword Throne's Bulb. We can see that to be the case as we see a panel of Inogen who is using the ability of the Yamanaka clan, which is the mind transfer jutsu, which either allows him to bring his mind somewhere else and take control of another person's body, like we have seen Ino do multiple times, or communicate to his teammates. This is what we're currently seeing Inogen do in that future scene that Kashin Koji has observed using his ability. This tells us that what we're currently seeing is this, alongside the fact that we see Himawari in one of those panels, does indicate that they have been assigned a mission that is currently dealing with the fact that they have to return the Torn Soul Bulb to its original user, which means returning Shinki to his Torn Soul Bulb and bringing him back to life, and doing the same for Moegi. What is very interesting is the fact that we first had information regarding the fact that Himawari should not be allowed to leave the village. And in the update that Kashin Koji ended up getting using his ability, we do end up seeing that Himawari is somewhat active, and it doesn't necessarily appear like she is anywhere in the leaf. This ends up telling us that it is most likely that since she is under Team 10, as she is basically being trained by Team 10, as we saw in the first chapter of the manga, and was also told to us in the interview questions by Ikimoto, stating that she is being trained by Team 10, it makes a lot of sense that if Inogen is there, Himawari is also going to be part of that mission. And the only way it would make sense for Himawari to be part of that mission and to be part of that fight is due to an injury that Jura sustained, which either causes him to be inactive for a period of time, allowing Himawari to do her thing, or Jura is busy doing something else that is more important in allowing Jura to regain an edge in this battle, this chess game that is currently going on versus him and Kashin Koji. And this is where the most important part of the video comes to be, and that is this chess game that is occurring between Kashin Koji and Jura. Because as we clearly know, Boruto was meant to die in this fight versus Jura. However, the decisions that Boruto has taken has allowed him to deviate from that future to be. Although we have clearly seen how Boruto's plan is currently working in the fact that we have a Kawaki who ended up making an appearance, allowing Boruto to escape from death, and that plan literally allowed him to change the future and in a way caused Jura's downfall. That is clearly one way of viewing things. However, Boruto seemingly have shifted the sacrifice of him being the one to die to Kashin Koji being the one to end up perishing. As what if this entire mission of essentially giving the Soul Torn Bulb to its original host, being Shinki and Matsuri, is not what is actually going on, because it wouldn't make too much sense. Right now we have it in Yara who is carrying Yado and is going to go to Shinki. Most likely what is going to happen is that Shinki is going to end up being brought back using the Soul Thorn Bulb and essentially witnessing the dying moments of Yado. I don't know if there's going to be a technique to bring her back to life or something interesting happens in regard to that, but I don't really care much for Yado, so there is no point in diving deep any further when it comes to that. However, the reason why I'm making this distinction is if Yara and Yado are basically about to go and bring Shinki back to life and also essentially save Gaara, who is also on the verge of dying, then for what reason do we have Team 10 that is going to that location? For what reason is Himawari, especially due to the fact that she is the target for Jura? Why is it that she ends up going to the Land of Wind, especially in that underground lair? There is no purpose if it is not to help bring Shinki back to life. So if that is not the case, due to Yado and Ayara already going to go do that very own thing, why is Himawari there? And the answer simply lies in the first reason why Matsuri was there in the first place, and that reason is Kashin Koji. In an attempt to find out who Boruto's accomplice was, Matsuri made his way to that base to end up finding out where Kashin Koji was exactly. This was deviated by the fact that we had Gaara, Ayara, and Yado there, including Shinki, which deviated that battle from taking place between Matsuri and Kashin Koji, or at least Matsuri finding out exactly where Kashin Koji was. But what we do end up seeing is that the layout of that hideout is quite similar to that of where exactly Boruto and Kashin Koji are hiding. So after fighting versus Boruto and determining that he is not the one who actually has the information, but it is actually his accomplice who he is working with that has that info, then the next move to be made would be to take out that guy, and that guy will be Kashin Koji. So although Boruto ended up changing the future, which ultimately led towards his life being spared, the life that would end up being sacrificed is that of Kashin Koji, where we have an arc where Team 10 is essentially being placed to end up allowing Kashin Koji to remain unseen, or allowing Kashin Koji to not be killed. And that is using either Himawari as a way to be somebody who ends up healing and fighting in that fight through the help of Kurama, or Kashin Koji is using Himawari as bait to end up having him live. And the reason why that would be important for him to do is because his life technically at this current moment would be a little bit more valuable than that of Himawari due to his ability. If somebody else has to die and allow him to survive so that he could help bring this calamity to an end and save the future, we have clearly seen that Kashin Koji is open to those sorts of ideas, which ultimately to me seems like something that Kashin Koji, based off everything that we have seen in this arc, would be open to do. And we have already seen how Boruto and Kashin Koji relationship has begun to sour, and thus some of these things coming to be wouldn't be too surprising to me, especially due to the fact that there are a number of people who are currently targeting Kashin Koji. And one fight that we'll most likely get to see is that of Kashin Koji versus Code, where the person that everybody seemingly forgot is going to be the one to take down Kashin Koji. And I don't know if he inherits any of the powers that Kashin Koji has, which is a very important thing to mark, as the power that he has in some way has been connected to his eye, as we have seen. And guess what Code doesn't have right now? He is missing one eye, similarly to Boruto. With Boruto, the eye that he has scarred will ultimately end up becoming the Jogan, and when Momoshiki possesses Boruto, it becomes the Byakugan. But for Code, it doesn't appear like he has another eye or the jutsu that will end up replacing it. And thus, Kashin Koji's eye that allows him to receive these updates and see the future is going to be the eye that Code ends up using to replace the one that he ended up losing to Sasuke. And what's very interesting is that Code was technically nerfed by Jura by losing his arm. So we're going to see a weakened Code get to fight Kashin Koji, who has this new ability from Shibai himself, making the fight a lot more realistic and a little bit more even, allowing Kashin Koji to potentially demonstrate something that is quite interesting. And this is why I say that right now we're simply seeing the calm before the storm, as although Boruto did end up changing the future, the fact that somebody has to die in Boruto's inner circle still ends up remaining. And to me, that person has always been Kashin Koji. Kashin Koji has to perish, especially with such a broken ability, which will ultimately be him perishing and giving Boruto a last warning of the future. However, what would be extremely scary would be for Kashin Koji's ability to be stolen by somebody like Code. Obviously, I feel like the power would be a lot more balanced when it comes to Code having it, as we clearly know that he isn't the smartest. So maybe he would not be able to use it as a way to always end up winning, but the way he would use it is going to be to remain in the shadows and ultimately await an opportunity for him to basically come at the climax and rob people of a victory or rob people of their goals, similarly to how Momoshiki used to do all the time. And that's going to be extremely critical for the moments to come, whether it be him becoming an Otsutsuki by getting an actual chakra fruit or by simply eating one of the Thorn Soul balls, whether it be Jura, Bug, or any other character that we end up seeing end up losing their life and the Soul Thorn bulb ends up appearing. And that's why you have to watch this video right here, as understanding exactly what the shinju do is the key to understanding exactly how they could be taken advantage of by future opponents.